Soldiers going on combat deployments do actually have opportunities typically to be able to take some vacation, take a little bit of leave time away from that deployment to be able to go home and see their families and everything. And I wanted to share my experience from the 2 times that I deployed to Iraq during Operation Iraqi Freedom and what kind of the process was like and what kind of happened when I did get the opportunity to actually take some vacation, to take some leave. During these 2 deployments to Iraq, we had an opportunity to be able to take leave, and it was for 15 days. Now, you got the option to either take 15 days of leave, or you could choose if you didn't want to take that leave, you didn't want to go back home or whatever, you usually got the opportunity to take 4-day pass and go to Qatar. So some individuals, for whatever reason, did not want to take their vacation, did not want to take that leave time, so they chose to instead take the 4-day pass and go to Qatar, which I heard was pretty awesome. But both of my deployments, I took the option to take my 15 days of leave and go back home. So at some point in time when you usually arrived in country is how we kind of did it, was we knew that, somewhere's in there, if you wanted to take leave, you were gonna get a chance to do so. You didn't really get to necessarily pick when you're gonna be able to do so. They usually did, at least for us, where they kind of had some different time frames for different individuals. They might say that, hey, you guys are gonna have to take leave at the beginning of it, you guys are gonna have to take it in the middle of it, and you guys are gonna have to take it at the end of it, usually a couple months into that deployment. It kind of sucked if you guys stuck having to take leave like towards the beginning of the deployment because you weren't there for very long. You go home, take 15 days leave, come back, and now you got a long time, it feels like, before you go and actually get to leave and be done with that deployment. So it kind of sucked having it in the beginning. In the end, it was kind of rough too, but the middle was kind of the nice sweet spot you wanted to get. I was pretty fortunate enough that both times I got it actually fairly close to the middle-ish kind of area. I didn't really have it too early in the deployment, and I didn't have it too late in the deployment. I was pretty lucky and got it pretty much in the middle. So they started to identify, what soldiers are going towards the beginning, what are going in the middle, what are going to the end, and kind of lay out the dates as far as when you're going to go, because obviously you got to keep a certain percentage there to be able to keep missions going. You can't just go and let everybody go at the same time, let them go whenever they want. They kind of have to kind of structure it a certain way. There were some people that have like priorities, like if you had a soldier that maybe had a spouse that was pregnant and they were expected around this time, then sure, they probably would have some kind of priority to go during that time frame of when probably the child is going to be born, or what they're aiming for, or what they think the child might be born on. Outside of that, if you didn't have any kind of specific priorities, then it might just kind of fall into what was available. So in all my experiences with taking this 15-day leave, you would start off with taking a flight to Kuwait. You would have to travel from Iraq into Kuwait, and you do so by a flight. Both of my 2 deployments, we had an airfield. So when I was in Tal Afar, which is in northern Iraq, and when I was, of course, in Baghdad, we had the Baghdad International Airport, but they had a military side of it. So both times I was actually at a location that had an airport. Other individuals might have to kind of catch a convoy, get a ride somehow with another convoy. Maybe the unit makes some kind of arrangements to take a convoy to take the soldiers to a nearby airport so they can fly out of there because they need to get them back to Kuwait. The rough thing flying out of Kuwait and everything like that is they do kind of a little bit crazy flight maneuvers. They have to do these combat takeoffs and these combat landings, which basically means hurry up and land. It's not at all like a commercial airline. You're on a C-130, you're in these chairs maybe that are really uncomfortable. I think most of the ones I was in were, you were kind of seated kind of sideways, and you had people like kind of in front of you, and you had to almost like intertwine your legs together because there wasn't much room. So you had those kind of airplanes, and it's a really quick takeoff to get up into the air to hopefully avoid being shot down by an RPG or a missile or shot at or something like that. So really quick takeoff. And then the landings were also like really super quick to hurry up and get down before someone has an opportunity to start shooting at you, to fire a rocket at you, something along those lines. So not the most comfortable flights at all. So nonetheless, we would make it over into Kuwait. We would land in Kuwait, and the process of that was we had to still kind of travel with gear. Like you had to still wear your vest, you had to wear your helmet and everything. We even still traveled with our weapons and everything. But when we arrived in Kuwait, they had like a unit that was kind of like, that was their purpose there in Kuwait, was to process soldiers that were, coming in and out of country for either leave or maybe they were showing up later or whatever. And so you'd kind of arrive at that unit and kind of do a little bit of kind of like out processing to go on leave. So we would tag like our vests and everything, our helmet, our weapons and everything, we get tagged, and they would hold on to that stuff for us. They stored it in a secure location, tagged it, so we had our name and everything associated with it, and they secured that stuff so that way, nothing happened to it. Because obviously we don't want to take that stuff, can't take the weapons obviously with us back to the States, for leave, so that stuff needs to get secured properly. So all that stuff got secured, all right? And then We usually spent either a day or two. It really just kind of depended on what the flights were for availability to get out of Kuwait. There's a lot of things that would cause like delays. Maybe it's a sandstorm, maybe it's just things going on in the environment, or whatever kind of things that sometimes cause delays. So you didn't usually get to leave usually the same day. Typically it was the thing where you arrived and then hopefully you get a flight the next day. Sometimes it may take a day or two, whatever the case was. You had to usually stay in these tents is what we had in all my experiences. We had these tents with some bunk beds and you're staying there, and then they might assign an individual to be a part of your group to be like the NCOIC or something of that to kind of check on flight statuses. And if we got the go ahead that, hey, we're good to go, we're getting on this flight, then we would hurry up and grab our stuff and head over to wherever we need to go to be able to catch that flight. Now, for that flight out of Kuwait, that was a commercial airlines, but not like a commercial airline like we were with civilians. It was a commercial airline with other soldiers that were, probably going on leave or transitioning out of that area, whatever the case was, but we were with just a bunch of other soldiers on this airplane. And I guess not really necessarily soldiers as in army. There was also like Air Force individuals and other people that were possibly deployed to that environment. So they also would be catching these flights as well. Oh, and by the way, if you've been digging the Lucky Arms, they're tactically delicious t-shirt, that comes courtesy of Grunt Style. They sent me this one and another one for St. Patty's Day. So they have some great St. Patty's Day themes. They got some other cool shirts for other holidays or even outside of a holiday. But utilize that link that I got down in the description box and utilize the promo code Chaos Army to save yourself 25% off if it's the first time you've ordered from Grunt Style. They've got a lot of awesome t-shirts, they've got hats, they've got sweatpants, they've got all sorts of cool stuff. So definitely check out what they got. Maybe something for yourself, something for a friend of yours, whatever. Make sure you're utilizing that promo code so you can save a little bit of money, and making a purchase also helps support the channel too. So check them out, they're awesome. So once we got on that flight, that commercial airline, it was just nothing but military on that flight to take us over to the stateside. They had usually a specific destination. I think both times we arrived on the East Coast, but I want to say there was one of the times I think we went all the way to Dallas possibly. But nonetheless, you arrive in the United States at an airport and you still have to go through customs, but we would go through customs at that airport. So all of us would come through the airport, go through customs, and then split off to whatever flights we had. One of the times I actually remember it was really cool. I want to say I think we landed in Texas. It might have been Dallas Fort Worth or something like that. But they had this catwalk that we had to walk across with these glass windows that overlooked the other terminals, because they're kind of segregated because we're coming from an international flight and we have to go through customs before we get access to the rest of the terminal, the rest of the airport. And we're all in uniform with our bags walking across, and you look down onto the main terminals and there's just all these civilians down there looking up at us, clapping. And so it felt pretty cool. A lot of, patriotism was kind of going on around that time especially. So, everybody's looking up at you, clapping, the whole crew down there, all the people waiting on their flights to go wherever they're going to, just looking up at us and clapping. Felt pretty awesome. So we went through customs to get us into the main terminal, and I remember, some of us had to go to different parts of the airport that were not easy to get to from where we were coming from. So they told us that if we go outside, they had a bunch of taxis all lined up. Just hop in one, you don't have to pay anything. It was all taken care of, and they would take us over to one of the nearby terminals to be able to catch our connecting flight to wherever we were going to. I remember coming down the escalator and there's just a bunch of people that are really just volunteers. None of them I don't think were family members, maybe some of them were, but for the most part, a lot of them were just volunteers, and they were just down there to show support for the military, holding up signs, clapping for us. I remember there was a bunch of Girl Scouts that wanted all the soldiers to sign their autographs inside these notebooks and everything. People were handing out snacks to us, drinks to us and everything. And then you went out to the taxis, and then the taxi cab driver asked you which terminal you're going to for your connecting flight, and they would take you over there and drop you off. So from there, you would just go and wait for your flight to wherever you're going to. So wherever you're going on leave, that's where you're going to. And by the way, that is also when day one would start of your 15 days. It wouldn't start from when you left your unit. It started from day one of when you arrived in the States to where you're gonna go to. So that way, if you spent a couple days in Kuwait, it didn't count against you. It did not start until you actually arrived in the United States. So that would start day one. That was day one right there. And then you go and connect to your connecting flight from there. So I remember it was pretty cool because, like I said, there was a lot of patriotism around that time during the Iraq War and everything, during Operation Iraqi Freedom. So you're pretty much almost guaranteed you're gonna get bumped up to first class, which did happen to me. I was in uniform because you had to travel in uniform, and the flight attendant, I remember, came and grabbed me. They were like, "Excuse me, sir, would you come with me?" I almost thought I was getting kicked off the flight. I didn't really know what was going on. So I had to grab my bag and everything like that, and she took me up to the front and she's like, oh, this is your new seat. This is where you're gonna be sitting. And I was like, oh, awesome. So I got to sit in first class. That's really the only time I've ever flown first class, was because I was in uniform during these deployments when I was going home on leave, and they bumped me up to first class. So that was pretty cool. I also remember during my first deployment, I had to take this shuttle from the LAX to Van Nuys, where I was gonna meet up with my father to pick me up to go be on leave to hang out with family and everything. And the shuttle driver, once we arrived, it was normally like, I think like a $15, $20 kind of fee for the shuttle. He just went and he was like, when I was getting off the bus, he's like, oh, you just go over here, go see the window person over there. So I didn't know what the special deal was. Everybody else went this way. He wanted me to go this way. And so I went up to the window and the driver was like, hey, he's good, don't worry about him. So I didn't have to pay for the fee. So there's a lot of those kinds of things. A lot of people that are thanking you, and it felt really cool, you know, actually getting a chance to, you know, feel like super important, like you're a celebrity, or, you know, certain other kind of, you know, factors. It was just definitely a different experience. It was pretty cool. But nonetheless, you're there for those 15 days and you had a report day to get back. So you had a flight that was going to get you back to a specific location where you're gonna link up with all the other soldiers that were going on vacation, all the other service members that were going on vacation, to be able to link up back to this location and then get you back to where you were going to. So nonetheless, 15 days is over, right? You go back, you gotta fly in uniform, so you get your uniform back on, you get to where you're going to. I think we had to link up, I think in Maine or something. I forget where it was at, but nonetheless, we arrived, you link up, there's some NCOs ICs there to kind of get you checked in to make sure that we had the people they were supposed to have and kind of stop your leave time, because that's supposed to be your last day, is that 15 days, that day that you're actually leaving. So they get you on the flight, same kind of deal, where this final flight, you might have had a connecting flight or two connecting flights to get there, but this flight is gonna, again, be nothing but military individuals to get you back to Kuwait. So we're back on that flight, takes us all the way back to Kuwait and everything. We arrive back at the camp there in Kuwait, which was an Air Force base that was there in Kuwait. We receive our vest back, we receive our weapon back, we receive our helmet back, all that stuff, and just kind of wait for the next flight. And a lot of us were kind of like, man, I hope we get delayed here for a few days, because you really didn't do anything. All you were doing is really just sitting around waiting for your flight to get you back to wherever you needed to get to. I think both times, I think I only had it where maybe like 1 or 2 days of staying there. I think the second time when I was returning, I think we got stuck there for 2 days. So you're kind of just stuck sitting around, sleeping, whatever you wanted to do, kind of reacclimating back to the different time zone and everything, and then eventually getting back on one of those dang C-130s to take the flight from Kuwait back over to wherever it is you're going to, doing the crazy combat landing where you're coming in quick and coming in hot to land that sucker, and then reporting back to your unit, back to work as normal. All of that travel, you don't have to pay for that. We didn't pay for any of that travel. I'm not even 100% sure if we got charged leave, but we probably did get charged 15 days of leave. But all of that travel did not cost us anything. We didn't have to pay for any of those flights, none of that stuff. So you return, finish off the rest of the deployment, and then everybody returns after that's over. It was great. It was always nice to kind of get that little bit of time to kind of unwind, see family and everything like that. And then it always really sucked going back, because you know what you're going back to, you know what to expect and everything. So eventually I had to return and finish off the rest of that deployment. Having it towards the middle was pretty handy, so that was pretty nice. I didn't mind it as much. Like some people, where they maybe did it towards the end, so they had to wait a long time to get on leave, and then they would go on leave and then come back, and then had a short amount of time, maybe 3 months left in the deployment, so it felt pretty quick to get to go back. But it really sucked for those individuals that got stuck having to take leave at the beginning, because they got to go home and then they come back and they have a long time before we get the hell out of there. So that part was probably pretty horrible. Make sure that if this is the type of content you want to learn about, the United States Army, to prepare yourself for joining, hear about the Army because you're a veteran or you're someone currently in the Army and you want to get some tips, make sure you hit that subscribe button. But I want your viewing experience to continue. If you did not catch my video talking about my 2 times I went on a deployment, well, I got a video right here that you can check out. This explains kind of what I did during my 2 deployments to Iraq. So check that out. Check out links down in the description box. Hit that thumbs up. Thanks for hanging out. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.